Okay, so today we're going to move into Module 10. And Module 10, I think, has a really bunch of neat stuff, okay? Because Module 10, we're talking about doing what-if analysis. And that's one of the beautiful things about a spreadsheet, is that you change one value and everything automatically gets updated, okay? Think about the days of paper and pencil. And if you change one value, you had to go and recalculate everything, okay, with adding machines or whatever happened. Well, Excel, all spreadsheets, that is one of the big beneficial powers to those is the what-if analysis. And there's some tools that you probably haven't used that can be very useful in describing scenarios. Okay, describing what happens if units sold goes up, what happens if the rate changes, what happens if we go into a recession or a growth period. So Module 10, we're going to talk about some of these tools. And the tools we're going to talk about today, see how far we get, is we're going to talk about something called goal seek and something called a data table. We'll do one dimensional or one variable and two variable data tables. So let's go to Module 10 in Blackboard. And I'd like you to go down to Excel 10 and go to Tutorial if you would. And I want you to bring up the Creative workbook. And as we always do, please enter your date, or enter your name, and the date if you like. Oops. And we have, for creative, we have a simplified, this also should tickle the fancy of some of you accounting majors. Again, we have a simplified income statement, okay, where we have unit cost of a good, how many we're going to sell, so we have the revenue, we have the expenses we're going to back out, the variable expenses. Variable expenses, as you know, are related to producing things, material costs, labor costs, those kinds of things. We also have fixed expenses that we have to cover. Fixed expenses are things like, hey, we have to pay our people a salary, advertising, administration, miscellaneous, could be rent. All those good things are fixed expenses. And that results in total revenue, total expenses, and then we have net income. One analysis that's done very frequently is something called cost, volume, profit analysis. So basically we look at how much we're going to charge for something, how that may affect the volume, and then how that affects our profit, right? If I charge more for something, what generally happens if I charge more for something? This is elasticity. If you remember econ, it all comes together. If I charge more for something that's an elastic good, what happens?
Units sold go down.
Yeah, units sold goes down. If I charge less, units sold may go up. It depends how elastic the product is. But we want to find the optimal price, right? We want to find the optimal price point. And we want to find where we can make the most money, right? What's the price point that makes the most money? The other thing we look at, and when we talk about expenses, we talk about, covering our fixed expenses. We have variable expenses covering our fixed expenses. How many do we have to sell to break even? We looked at this a little bit. That's called a break-even point, right? Break-even point is where you sell enough product where your variable profit covers your fixed expense. You guys know that? Yes? Okay. So if we look at this situation, let's look at the situation that we have up here for the creative company. We are projecting, an income statement of selling 24,000 units at $24. That gives us $576,000 in revenue. Our total expenses, variable and fixed. Fixed looks like it's $260,000. Total expenses is $519,000. So we're projecting a profit of $56,000. Okay. Now, if we do what-if analysis, very simply, because it's a spreadsheet, we can look at things like
what if I only sold 15,000 units? Okay, what if I only sold 15,000 units? Well, 15,000 units, I'm going to lose money. Okay, and if I only sold 20,000 units, let's see what I'm at, 20,000 units. I'm almost there, okay? 3,000, I make about $3,000. If instead of doing what I just did, if I wanted to make that change and then, instead of scanning down and seeing what net profit is, what's another way I could have done that so that I could always see net profit? You guys have two ways you could have done that. Yes, Sally? Okay, I could have built a watch, right? A watch window to always show net profit, so as I make changes, see what net profit is, right? Add that watch window, you guys remember we did that last class? What else could I have done? Because one's way on the bottom, one's on top, what could I have done?
Freeze.
Not freeze, split, I could have split. Freeze is in that same grouping, you're right, but I could have split the panes, okay? But anyways, I'll just leave it there for that for now, okay? Now what I want to do is I want to determine how many units I need to sell to break even. Okay, I want to know what the break even point is. I know at 24,000 units I make a good bit of money, 50,000. I know when I sell 15,000 I lost money. So somewhere between 15,000 units and 24,000 units is a break even point. I could experiment, I could select until I get down to 0. But there's a tool that's very useful under the Data tab, and there's a set of tools called Data Tools, and we're going to look at what-if analysis, okay? What-if analysis. And the tool we're going to use first today, very simple tool but very powerful, is something called GoalSeek, okay? GoalSeek. So let's click on GoalSeek. And it really only has 3 input variables, okay? You say, what cell do we want to set to a certain value? And this is the value you want it set to by changing this cell, okay? So if I'm doing break-even analysis means net profit is what at that point? We break even, it's 0, right? So we're going to say to GoalSeek, set the cell net income or net profit, net B26, to 0. And Excel said, hey, I can do that, but you have to give me something I can change. Okay, I will find the value that makes that 0, but you have to give me something I can change. Well, we're talking about break-even point. How many do I have to produce? So I'm going to look at B4, units sold. And I click OK. And it says GoalSeek with cell B26 found a solution. The target value was 0. I got you to 0. And it says if I make 19,719 items, okay, exactly, that is, I will have a net profit of exactly $0. That is my break-even point. Does that make sense? If I make more than that, I'm going to have more money. If I make less than that, I'm going to lose money. Does this make sense? Okay, now, I could have also done, say, I know I'm going to sell, let's say I'm going to sell 15,000. Okay, so we're going to do GoalSeek as well. We're going to say that's the thing set in stone. I know I'm only going to sell 15,000. I want to know what price would I have to charge. Maybe I have an order for 15,000, a contract. What price would I have to charge to at least break even? I'm going to use GoalSeek again. So I'm going to go to what if, GoalSeek, and this one's a little bit different. Okay, set cell. I still want to set the cell to B26. I still want it to be 0. But what do I want for the changing cells? By changing cell, what am I going to allow Excel to change? Price per unit. B5 in this case. And I click OK, and it tells me, hey, if you know you're going to sell exactly 15,000 items and you want to break even, you better charge $28.15 at least per item. Okay? Now, all Excel is doing behind the scenes is what we do if we were going to do it manually, like trial and error. It's putting in a number and saying, okay, it's higher here, so try a lower number. It says, oh, it's lower here, and then it's like converging on a value. You guys know what I'm saying? Just like we would do it if we typed in values. But because it's a computer, It obviously can do it a lot faster than we can, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. I want to do, this isn't part of the case, any questions on that? But I want to show you something. Oftentimes we use GoalSeek when we don't have a nice formula, okay? If I have the area of a rectangle, it's length times width, and I can solve for any of the variables, right? And I know, like when we talked about financial analysis, last module we had a formula for principal value, for future value, for rate, for number of periods, all those goods for payment, all those things. We had a formula for that. Well, sometimes we have something that doesn't have a nice formula. So we can use GoalSeek to say, well, I know I can do it trial and error. I don't have a nice formula. Just find it, right? Just find it. Find the one that makes it so. Makes it 20,000, makes it 50,000, makes it 0. So let's make a new tab. And I'm going to use the example that we used last class, but we're going to do it old school way. Okay, so we're going to do it the mathy way, the way you might have learned maybe in finance class before you did it with Excel. Let's say we have principal value. So I'm going to put PV here. And I'm going to say, I don't know, we're starting out with 10 grand. And I'm not going to make any payments to this, okay? I'm just going to say I want to invest 10,000. Let's put years here. And let's just put, I don't know, we're going to invest 10,000 for 10 years. Let's put rate here. Let's put 5%. I want to make that a nice percentage. And here I'm going to put future value. And I'm not going to use the formula. I'm going to use the mathematical formula. So what I'm going to say here, if I invest $10,000 at 5% interest over 10 years, the formula that I would enter, I could do the equal FV, but let's not do that. I'm going to say my principal value, which is B3, times, and this would be 1 plus the rate to the power, and the power in Excel is the caret symbol, it's above the 6, the number of years. So what this will do is it'll say 1.05 to the 10th power, because that's 0.05%, times my original value, or $10,000. And it says, hey, at the end of this deal, okay, I'd have, might as well make that currency, I'd have $16,288.35. So I could do this with those functions, right? I could do equal rate, I could do those kind of things, but what if I say I don't want to deal with those? What if I said I want to know what rate I would have to get to double my money in 5 years? Okay, how can I use GoalSeek to determine that? What rate would I need to get to double my money in not 5 years, but 10 years? What tool would I have to use? What tool could I use? How could I use GoalSeek to do that? I could say, what if analysis, GoalSeek, and what is my set cell? What is my set cell in this case? I said, I want to know what rate I would have to get for 10 years to double my money. What is my set cell?
D3.
What's that?
D3.
No. What? Because D3 is the thing that I'm going to change, but what is the cell that I want to equal to something?
Future value.
Future value. So in this case, it is E3. Maybe, did you say E3, Ronnie? Did I miss it?
I said D3.
Okay. Let's go to E3. And what do we want to set that value to? We want to make it equal to what?
20,000.
I said double your money, so we'll say 20,000. So I'm just going to put 20,000. And what cell do I want to allow it to change to get there? D3. I click OK, and it tells me, it's probably not 7% exactly, let me add some decimal places. I need to get a rate of 7.177% over those 10 years for me to end up doubling my money. Does that make sense? Sure, it does. Okay. And if you even think about the rule of 72, it does work. What if I said, let's go back to 5%. Let's say we're just going to get 5%. And I could do this with any other variable. Maybe I'm really keen on ending up with $20,000. There's some reason I need $20,000 10 years from now. I could say, well, what else could I change? Well, if I go to data, what if analysis, goal seek, I say I really want to make sure I end up with E3 being at $20,000, but this time maybe the thing I can change, and I know I'm only going to get 5%, that's what the bank told me, maybe the thing I can change is my principal value, how much I put in at the beginning. So if I know I'm going to get 5% for 10 years, how much would I need to invest to end up at 20,000? Okay, and it tells me I would have needed to start with 12,278.27. So if you think about goal seek, it's kind of like solving, if you have a formula or cells, it's kind of like solving for that one value, okay? That one value, that unknown. You say, I want to know what this needs to be for us to get this cell to this value, whatever it means, okay? And we don't have to have a formula for that. We don't have to have a rate, a pair of value. It can be anything. But goal seek is simple, but it's pretty powerful. Any questions on goal seek? All right, then let's move on to another tool, which is also nice. Okay, goal seek kind of does a quick and dirty. It changes the what if values and leaves it as it is. But sometimes we want to see visualized in a table or a graph what happens if we change a value. Okay, we're going to use a tool called a data table. So we're going to build a little data table here. So let's go over to cell E2, and I'm going to enter cost, volume, profit, analysis. And then I'm going to merge and center that over E2 to H2. And I'm going to give it a style. There we go. And the one variable that I want to change, I want to see what happens. And this is going to be a one variable data table, is units sold. I'd like to see what happens, to some things, some other result cells as units sold changes. So I'm going to put in the title units sold. I would like to see what happens to revenue. Obviously that's going to change. Revenue. I would like to see what happens to my expenses because they're going to go up, right, because of variable expenses. And I'd really like to see what happens to net income. Might as well center those. And let's go back to where we started with our little creative ventures, put units sold at 24,000. We always need a starting value. So we need to seed this table, if you will. Okay, we need to reference things over in my income statement that will be used to return this value. So the first row is seeded from our original data. So in units sold, I'm going to click on there and say equal, and then I'm going to reference B4. because that's where units sold always is, right? It's always in B4, so equal B4. For revenue, I'm going to say equal, and then revenue looks like it's in, where's revenue? Total revenues in B24. And hit enter. Expenses, I'm going to hit equal, and I want total expenses, and total expenses are in B25. And I want net income, and net income is in equal B26. So now if I change units sold from 24,000 to, let's go to 15,000. Automatically, we can see what happens, right? But I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to do that every time. I want to see like, well, what happens when I sell 15,000? What happens when I sell 12,000? What happens when I sell 14,000? So what I'd rather do is build a table that shows me all of those results. And I don't want to have to copy those formulas over here into revenue, expenses, and net income to see what it results in. So what I'm going to do, let's go back to 24,000 as our start value, our current value. And below units sold, I'm going to put 10,000. So we'll see what happens with 10,000. I'm going to put, let's go every 5,000. So I'm going to put 15,000. And I'm going to want to fill this series. You remember fill the series, so I'm going to highlight 10,000 to 15,000 and then drag down until I get to 35,000. Guys with me? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete this table, and I'm not going to do it manually by typing in the numbers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this deal. So from E4 to H10, okay, E4 to H10, and then I'm going to go up to data. I'm going to go into what if analysis. And what we're building right here is called a one variable data table because I'm only changing one variable. The one variable I'm changing is units sold. Okay, units sold. So go down to data table. Okay, and it says row input cell, column input cell. Okay, well, in this case, the thing I want to change is in a column. Okay, you see how it's in a column here? So I'm going to tab off of row input cell and leave that blank. And in column input cell, I'm going to select B4. And then I'm going to click OK. Let's make that currency so it's nicer. The hell? So what that did, okay, I seeded it with these first row of values, right? And so that's how it knows. Remember when I selected that data table, I did select that top row because it knows what it says is, hey, this 10,000, remember I put that column? It represents
B4. So when I enter in 10,000 for B4, what does it return down here for revenue, for expenses, and net income? And let's just see if it's right. So if I put in 10,000 up here, we go down and we'll see revenues 240K, expenses are 368K, and I lose $128,150. Okay? So you see, what this allowed me to do, I could have done the whole way up to, I don't know, 100,000 or $1 million, right? Or 1 million units, okay? And saw what the result is from that. That's called a one variable data table. It allows me to see a bunch of scenarios at once instead of someone playing around and saying, what happens here, what happens here? Now I have it all in a table. This is exactly what happens here. And what I did not have to do is recopy the formulas that I have already embedded into this income statement over here into this data table. Does that make sense? It just automatically filled them in because it says, I don't care what it is. If I make this 10,000, he wants me to pull over B24, B25, B26. If I make B4 15,000, he wants me to put in B24, B25, 26. So it did that for us behind the scenes very, very quickly. Does that make sense? Now, when we have something like this, okay, when we have something like this, a lot of times, you know, this is very useful to show. This is what happens in various units sold. But also, sometimes we want to see the results of this in a chart as well. So let's highlight E3 through G10. We're not going to graph the net income. We're just going to graph revenues and expenses. And I'm going to go up to Insert. I'm going to go to our charting. And I'm going to go to Scatter. I'm going to do the Scatter with smooth lines, okay, which is under Scatter, it's the second row, first one. And I'm going to select that guy. Okay, and it builds me a little chart. Okay. What's this point right here?
Break-even point.
What's that?
The break-even point.
Very good. Okay, it's the break-even point. So this chart represents what? It represents, okay, the revenue and expenses when we charge how much? $24. So if we charge $24, this point where, I can't remember what, probably it was at 19,000, I think, wasn't it 19,716? This point where revenue equals expenses is my break-even point. Remember we found that same point with Bull Seek? Well, what's nice about a chart like this as well is if I say, well, what if I want to charge, or the data table itself, what if this is different? What if I'm really going to charge, I don't know, someone recommended I charge $26. So I'm going to say the price per unit is $26. Look what happens when we change it to $26. First of all, now this data table for units sold with revenue and expenses is all based on the new price of $26. It automatically updates that, right? Because it's all feeding into that. But also, you look where those two things cross is now at a lower point. Okay, it's probably, I'd have to figure it out, but it's probably, I don't know, somewhere about 16,000, 17,000, which is what I'd expect. If I charge more, I make more money, right? And what happens to my break-even point? It goes down, right? I don't have to sell as many. If I charge less, let's say I charge, let's say I said instead of charging $24 or $26, I charge 21 bucks. Well, that, you know, it says, hey, your break-even point is somewhere, you know, it looks like it's around $27,000 or $28,000, okay? Or 27,000 units. So I hope you can see how this is, you know, it can be very, you know, this is a simple income statement, but we can analyze the hell out of it, you know, because think about it. When you start a company, start a business, whatever that is, you know, what you're going to charge for it is a big decision, okay? You have to estimate the size of the market, how much your expenses are, and that's, you know, what cost accounting is all about. Some of you guys have taken cost accounting.
how much this cost is. And there's also mixed expenses, partially fixed, partially variable. We didn't get into that for this, but that's also involved. So this is, can be very, very powerful stuff. Okay, so data tables can not only be used when we talk about changing one variable, but they can also be used when we change two variables. So what I've done so far, if you remember, is I said, well, the variable that we're changing is units sold, and then I'll monkey around with the unit cost and see how that changes my graph and changes my table. Well, we could also create, a two-dimensional or two-variable table. And that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to move this guy out of the way. And let's go to, try to stick with the cells the book wants us to stick with. In cell E12, move your graph out of the way if you will. I want you to enter net income analysis. And then I want you to merge and center that from E12 to J12 and pick a style that you are happy with. Okay, in F13, I'm going to write price per unit. This is just labeling. And then I'll merge and center that over F13 through J13. I'll pick another style. Okay. So we're going to build two dimensions of this table now. Okay, we're going to say what if analysis for both the units sold and the price. So we want both a column and a row. So starting in F15, let's enter 10,000. And then let's go down to 15,000. And let's go the whole way to 35,000. Oops. I put it in the wrong column. I'm sorry. Just move it over to E15. Cut and paste it over to E15. And the other thing we'd like to put in here is the price, various prices. So let's go 15, 20. Let's fill that series and go the whole way up to $35. Okay, so for a two-dimensional data table, we can only have one result cell because think about it, Excel is only what, two dimensions, yes? I guess it has a row and a column. Where they intersect, we can put one value. You know what I'm saying? One value. So if we sell our product for $15 and we sell 10,000 units,
what variable do you think we want to return? What if we said one thing can summarize the results of selling 10,000 units at 15 bucks? What would it be?
Net income.
Net income, right? Okay, so that's what we want to show up here. So this is a little bit different. Remember how we seeded the one-dimensional data table by that whole row referenced different things? Well, in this case, we're going to seed it by putting a seed value in the intersection of our row input cell, our column input cells, and our row input cells. So over there in E14, okay, E14, as Robbie was right, you're going to put in equal, okay, and one value that we want to show is B26. Okay, that's our net income. So I have to seed it. The only thing is, what about this in terms of aesthetics? You know, having this value out here is kind of ugly, right? So a couple things we could do with it. We could kind of hide it by making the font the same color as the background, right? The other thing we could do with it, or we could make a font real small, or shade it in, or whatever it might be, so you can't see that font. The other thing, and this is what the book recommends you do, so this is what we're going to do, is you can put a mask on it. We've seen masks before. We work with masks like things like putting in dashes and social security number, like date mask, you know, putting the slashes, things like that. Well, we can mask a whole field. So let's go and mask this whole field. So let's right-click on cell F14, or cell E14, I'm sorry. Go to Format Cells. Uh-oh. Go to Format Cells. Go to Number. The Number tab. And let's go to the Custom. Okay, what I'm going to mask it with is a word. Okay, in this case, the word I'm going to use, and because it's text, I'm going to put it in double quotes, units sold. So double quotes, units sold, double quotes, and click OK. So you see, even though the cell that's still in there is B26, which is a number, the mask is displaying, the custom format is displaying the word units sold. Okay? So that's one way, that's the way the book, that's probably not the way I would do it, but that's the way the book does it, so I'm going to follow along with that. Okay. We're going to select now this whole deal from E14 to J20. We're going to go up to our Data tab, over in Data Tools, What If Analysis, and I'm going to look at my data table. So it's the same step we used when we did the one-dimensional, one-variable data table, but this time I know I have two variables, one going along the rows, one going around the way of the columns. Okay? So what I want to do in the row input cell box, okay, the row input cell box, 15, 20, 25, 30, I'm going to select the original price, which is B5. Because that is, 15 is replace B5 with 15. Replace B5 with 20. Replace B5 with 25. Replace B5 with 30. For the column input cell, what do I want to reference here? B4, the unit sold. And then I'm going to click
the OK tab. Okay.
So what this is doing is it's changing units sold, it's changing the price, and it says, all right, if I sell 10,000 units at 15 bucks, I'm gonna lose $218,000. Actually, hey, there's no good scenario if I only sell 10,000 units, right? I'm always gonna lose money, it's just a matter of how much I'm gonna lose it. Say something like 20,000, hey, I need to, you know, if I sell 25, or if I sell it 25 bucks, I'll make 23,000, 30 bucks, 123,000, 30 bucks, 35 bucks, 223,700. So you see this two-dimensional data, two variable data table, it's changing both of those values. So think about that. Look how, and I could have made that, I don't know, 20 items by 20 items and presented that to my boss, okay, like an actuarial table, whatever it might be. So very, very powerful types of stuff we can do with these data tables. Let's now chart this. Okay, let's chart this as well. What we want to chart, this is, remember the values represent net income. So what we want to chart in this thing is we're going to select E15 through J20. Okay, E15 through J20. And once again, I'm going to do insert, and I'm going to do a scatter diagram. And let's do a scatter with straight lines. Let's switch that row column, that'll look better. There we go. So under designs, do switch row column. So now I have, it was like this, where it was showing the net income, and then, but if you switch row column, it's going to show us the number of units, and the net income is on the y-axis. Okay. How can I clean this up? Now obviously I can make a title to it, I could use styles, but one thing glaringly is what's one thing that's wrong with this graph? One thing we know this is units sold, and we know this is net income. What's one thing glaringly wrong with this graph that I don't understand what the hell it's telling me at this point? Yeah, what the series are, right? So series 1, I know, but what does series 1 represent? What does it represent in this case? Let's take a look at it. Okay. If I go over to select data, and I look at series 1, and I say edit, okay, looks like it's E15 to F15. I'm sorry, E20 to F. The y x values are E15 to E20. That's the x values. The y values are F15 to F20. So this is representing. Whoops. Gotta find my. Did I? I'm sorry. Let me move this out of the way. And let's go back to select data. So I'm going to edit series 1. And it looks like series 1 is using F15 through F20 for the y values. So the series name is what? F14. I click OK, click OK. And now you'll see that the blue line, the dark blue line, represents the $15. So this is the bad scenario, right? No matter how many units we sell, it's just a matter of how much money we're losing up to 35,000 units.
let's change one more. So if I go to select data, let's go down to the fifth one. I'm going to say edit, and then this one is the $35 deal. Okay, so yeah, it's column J. I'm all lined up. Click OK, and now I have 15, 35, and I can make that 20, 25, and 30. So I can make a nice title on this, but think about all the analysis that I've done on this little income statement, and what I can show people. This is possible scenarios. You can do it not only with something like an income statement, but think about like if anyone's ever gone to a financial advisor, they do this a lot as well. They give you different scenarios, like if you put away this amount of money every month for 5 years or 10 years, or if you get this rate in the market, or whatever it is. So it gives you multiple scenarios so that you can consider, hey, what's likely to happen, what's not likely to happen, what's the path I can take, and what's the path that I perhaps will not take. So I'm going to end there today.